The New York Jets are always good for a few headlines, and this is the precise reason why I start with them in my breakdown of the 32 teams in the NFL. So here we go, and let's start by having a look at the New York Jets and what to expect from them. Let's start by discussing the 30th ranked offense of the New York Jets from just 1 year ago. They were third last in the entire NFL in terms of passing game last year. A huge reason for this was Mark Sanchez, who accounted for 26 turnovers and poor play throughout the course of the year. Geno Smith was therefore drafted with the 39th overall pick to try and push incumbent Mark Sanchez. He's done this and more throughout training camp, even pushing ahead in the race to start come week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Geno Smith has shown a good ability to read defences and not throw interceptions, something Mark Sanchez struggled with throughout. The New York Jets have a young receiving group that involves players such as Jeremy Kerley and Stephen Hill heavily in game plans. I do not think that Santonio Holmes will feature at all throughout the course of this year. He is still suffering from that Liz Frank injury. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing either, as he's a cancer within the locker room. It also allows players such as Stephen Hill to have more of a breakout year. He will receive a lot of passes, and I think he has the opportunity to be a very good receiver in the NFL, as long as he holds onto the ball and recovers from his dropsies and the problems he had last year. Jeremy Kerley, however, was a player who was very much a bright spot for the Jets last year. He was good in both the slot and outside positions and had on average 8 snaps per game from outside the hashes with an average of 0.8 yards per route run. Braden Edwards is a player I don't expect to make out of training camp. Unfortunately, he is a fan favourite, but his talents have certainly depleted. Clyde Gates, however, appears to be improving and could even have a significant role come next year. I think Jeff Cumberland and Kellen Winslow, or K2 as many people call him, are two players who could be good for the Jets. However, I'm not sure they'll ever be elite. They are one step ahead of the Patriots, however, as neither of them are in jail. The Jets' offensive line is undoubtedly the most talented group on the offensive side of the ball. They're anchored in the middle by former Pro Bowl centre Nick Mangold, who's one of the best in the league, especially when asked to pull in the screen game and on rollout passes, something that Geno Smith will be expected to do often this year. He's also good for blocking up the middle, where Chris Ivory will look to expose this. Brickshaw Ferguson is summed up by his name. He's the brick wall of the Jets' offensive line. Since being drafted as a first-round pick, he has lived up to his potential. However, I expect to be even better this year, as the guard spot will not be a revolving door anymore. Willie Colon was brought in after 62 career starts at the age of 30. He will be expected to step right in as the starter and be better than either Slauson or Vlad Ducasse were last year. Austin Howard's the right tackle for the Jets and has been for the past year. He was brought in to try and push incumbent Wayne Hunter. He ended up beating him out. He wasn't great throughout the whole of last year, and he will definitely need to improve against specialist pass rushers in his own division such as Mario Williams and Cam Wake. The running game will be key to the New York Jets' success this year. They'll look to improve upon their ranking of being 12th in the NFL in terms of rush yards last year and look to be more like they were in 2009 where they were first in this category. Chris Ivory will go a long way to doing this when they traded the 4th round pick from this year's draft. They expect him to be like Marshawn Lynch, but they need him to stay healthy first. They also brought in Mike Goodson. He looks like a promising player with a 4.5 yards per carry average. However, with legal issues and personal problems, I don't ever think he'll make it out on the pitch or even the practice field for the Jets. Joe McKnight made the comment earlier this offseason that you'd have to kill him for his roster spot. Doesn't look like it'll be that difficult, even though Mike Goodson may have been giving it a go. Joe McKnight seems to be doing it himself, as he doesn't ever get on the field with multiple injuries. Bilal Powell, however, is very reliable. He's an under-the-radar player, and I think he could be good for the Jets this year. He's not as flashy as some of the other players, but he does have a little bit of wiggle to him. Look at him as a good third down back for the New York Jets. The Jets' best move this entire offseason was bringing in Marty Morningwood, the former offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. He runs a West Coast system which applies very nicely to Geno Smith and Mark Sanchez. He will be a lot more attack-minded than Tony Sparano, which will certainly add more excitement to all of the Jets' games, thank God. The key Jets offensive factors will be Geno Smith winning that quarterback competition, adding in read option as well. I think Chris Ivory will also apply well to the West Coast system. Stephen Hill will use all of this to be the breakout player. Defence is the Jets' bread and butter. They have a massive front seven, and according to Quinton, Coples, the best group in the entire NFL. Whether this is true or not, they certainly are young, athletic, and they are getting better each day at training camp. This all starts with Mohammed Wilkerson, who according to Pro Football Focus was the second-ranked 3-4 defensive end in the entire NFL last year behind JJ Watt. Don't worry guys, I think the Jets will take it if he performs that well again this year. Kenrick Ellis had his legal problems much like Mike Goodson early on in his career, but he's gotten over that now. I think he can be a good replacement for Sione Buhol. A nose tackle is never a sexy player, but he'll do you a job and clog up the middle of that defence. I think Antonio Garay was also a good addition, adding some experience. He has 138 career tackles and will still adding to that hopefully. Sheldon Richardson will need to learn from him as he was the 13th overall pick in this year's draft. Sheldon Richardson has a high ceiling, he's highly athletic, and I believe he can also be a very good player. Jets linebackers have been a constant problem for the Jets since the start of Rex Ryan's tenure in 2009. A huge reason for this has been the lack of pressure that the outside linebackers have got. This saw Quinton Coples be moved from defensive end to outside linebackers at the start of the off-season, where he will hope to improve upon his 5.5 sacks that led the Jets last year. Having watched video of Quinton Coples from North Carolina, I believe he's a better pass rusher than anyone that came out this year, and I think he'll transition to the new position pretty well. David Harris plays in the middle of the Jets defence and he is the leader of the group. He had 123 tackles last year and was the leading tackler. I expect him to improve upon that this year. Demario Davis will play alongside him, replacing Bart Scott, who was a third-round pick last year, who will add some much-needed athleticism and speed, and he's a good leader as well. Calvin Pace was re-signed earlier on in the off-season. He's had 42 career sacks, however his play has certainly declined over the last few years, but he was always solid. I think Antoine Barnes will challenge him for the other outside linebacker spot opposite Quinton Coples. He had 11 sacks in 2011, and the Jets will hope he can get close to that target once again. Ricky Sapu's flashed throughout training camp. The Jets will hope he can hold on to a roster spot, as he has failed to in other years, being merely on the practice squad. Garrett McIntyre also looked good at the back end of last year, and if him or Ricky Sapp can add to the Jets' outside linebacker group, the Jets will be pleased. I'll now move on to the Jets' defensive backs group, probably their most loaded area on the entire team. Spearheaded by Antonio Cromartie, a top 5 NFL corner, who demonstrated the ability last year to be a leader and also to lock down the number 1 target of opposing teams. He got to the Pro Bowl and I expect him to improve upon his 3 interceptions from 1 year ago. D. Milner was drafted with the 9th overall pick in this year's draft. He's a product from Alabama and I expect him to fit in nicely to the rotation involving players such as Carl Wilson, Ellis Langster, Isaiah Trufant and Wolves. I think the Jets will be good in that position and I think they are very, very deep. However, the safety position, the same cannot be said. DeJuan Landry was brought in to replace his brother LaRon. However, anyone who's cut from the Jacksonville Jaguars isn't a reliable target. The Jets also have Antonio Allen, second-year pros drafted in the 6th round last year to come in next to DeJuan. I expect him to beat out Jaquan Jarrett for the starting job and form a 54th pick of the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Jets will be good in the back end, but I do not believe safety will be their best position. The key factors for the New York Jets will certainly start with how much pressure the Jets get from the outside linebacker position. I believe Coples will have a breakout year and get more than his 5.5 sacks a year ago. I also think Cromartie will return to the Pro Bowl and prove all the doubters wrong. The Jets front office is an area where there's been lots of moves this off-season. Mike Tannenbaum obviously went, following on from some of the awful contracts he made. Rex Ryan is said to be on the hot seat, and even the lame duck coach. I don't believe this is the case, so I think Rex will get the best out of his squad, as he will motivate them. He will want to keep his job, and he will want to get to that post-season. I don't think they'll quite reach it, but I think they'll do enough to let Rex keep his job in the coming year. I think Idzik will notice that Rex does a very good job, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and I think we'll see the New York Jets returning to at least some of their past glory. So this brings me on to my prediction. I think the Jets will go 8-8, not quite making the playoffs, but equally not embarrassing themselves. So there we go. There's my full analysis on the New York Jets roster for the 2013 season. Possibly my 8-8 was being a bit kind to the Jets, but I still think they may well reach that target. So thanks a lot for listening, guys. I'd like to subscribe, like, everything like that. And also check out my blog. Follow it on Tumblr. I'll put the link right below. You can click on it. I'll be talking about all the 32 teams. It'll run in conjunction with this feed, and I'd like you guys to just have a look at it and check it out.